Is it true that to realize the self I should constantly hold on to the one who is searching? Should I always be aware of this person who is seeking the self? You need not hold on to the person who is searching. If you see that the one who is searching is the same as the one whose mind is wandering, if you see that both are false, you are already awakened. When you light a lamp, darkness ceases to exist. When you become aware of yourself as self, the darkness of other than self disappears. It is so difficult to avoid getting entangled in the mind. Staying detached from thoughts is like trying to stop the tide from coming in. Waves of new thoughts wash away the detached observer every few seconds. Self-inquiry must be done repeatedly and steadily. The wandering mind slowly loses its energy when it is subjected to constant scrutiny. The mind derives all its energy from the attention you give to thoughts and emotions. If you refuse to give them any attention, and instead challenge each thought as soon as it appears, sooner or later your attention will stop going out to all your stray thoughts. When the attractiveness of transient thoughts diminishes to the point where you no longer feel obliged to hold on to them whenever they appear, you will be able to rest quietly in the experience of your real nature without being distracted. We are accustomed to seeing a world of many separate objects. How can we change our vision so that we see only the self everywhere? If you repeatedly shift your attention to the all-pervasive consciousness within you, this habit of seeing the many will gradually disappear. You see multiplicity only because you give attention to that habit. Instead, right now, withdraw your energy from that habit and go the other way towards your real self. By steadily abiding in the self, you accumulate the energy to resist the illusion of multiplicity. As you continue to immerse yourself in pure consciousness, the habit of seeing the one as many will decrease until it slowly disappears. The disappearance of otherness happens at the same time as the disappearance of the ego. Is that correct? Yes. I have noticed that when one has a strong ego, the people nearby also seem to have strong egos. When we begin to become detached from the body and the mind, we don't seem to notice the emanations from other people. One who has eliminated his ego sees others as part of himself, just as arms, legs, feet, etc. are part of one body. All is one. Manikavachagar sang, "You are one and nobody is apart from you." The jnani does not see other people. He only sees the self. The spiritual power that is present in and near such people helps other people to lose their imperfect vision. That is why satsang is so important and so useful. Bhagavan once said, "The jnanis are the only pure people. Others are polluted by their egos." Getting the association of jnanis is very important for people who want to make spiritual progress. Does satsang mean association with jnanis, or can it also mean association with good people? The real sat, which is being, is within you. You associate with it and get satsang every time you turn your attention towards it. You do not need a jnani for such satsang. You can get it anywhere. On the other hand, worldly people who are living near jnanis are often not getting satsang because they are not tuning into the jnani's sat. Some people who live near saints are just like little insects called unni, which live on the udders of cows. They drink the blood there instead of the milk. Some people who were physically associated with Bhagavan ignored his teachings and failed to make contact with the grace he was radiating. They worked and ate at the ashram, but they got little benefit from being there. These people were not having satsang. They were just human unni. There was a group of Brahmins who were associated with Bhagavan who did not subscribe to the Advaitic view. All is Brahman, all is self. In those days, we used to read a lot from the Ribu Gita, a text which repeatedly says, all is Brahman. These Brahmins refused to join in because they didn't agree with the philosophy. "Where is this Brahman you are talking about?" they would say. "How can it be everything? How can you go on chanting all is Brahman when that is not your experience? Maybe these teachings are useful for people like Bhagavan, but why should people like us parrot these statements endlessly?" Bhagavan himself encouraged us to recite this text regularly. He said that constant and frequent repetition led to samadhi. In giving us this instruction, Bhagavan was giving us a method of experiencing some of the sat that was his real nature. In effect, he was offering us a highly effective form of satsang. But these Brahmins didn't want it. They wanted instead to complain about the contents of the book. When such people willfully turn down a method of associating with Bhagavan's sat, how can it be said that they are having his satsang? Even if such people didn't understand Bhagavan's teachings and didn't try to follow them, didn't they get a little benefit from just being near him? Perhaps their physical association with Bhagavan will bear fruit in some future life. Yes, this is true. In Yoga Vasishta, it is said that one who gets association with the jnani will gain mukti in only 4 or 5 lifetimes. These people were associated with Bhagavan physically and were made aware of his teachings, even if they didn't believe or practice them. These teachings are like seeds, which will begin to sprout when the time and the circumstances are right. It is said that saints like Guru Nanak, Kabir, and others were very much against idol worship. Bhagavan has explained that such worship is useful for some people at a certain stage of their sadhana. I have read that a true jnani will never criticize anything. Does this mean that these saints were not jnanis? Or is it that their followers didn't understand their teachings correctly? There is no doubt that Guru Nanak and Kabir were jnanis. If mumukshus, people who want self-realization, who are striving hard for liberation, hold on to a form of God, it often happens that their progress towards the truth is completely stopped. So, out of compassion for such beings, the saints criticized idol worship. Realized persons do not make critical judgments about anything. If they seem outwardly to criticize anything, it is only for the good of others. Their own inner experience is that there is no good or bad. If one is still identified with the body, there's nothing wrong with doing idol worship. Those people who are centered in the body, who take this body to be I, are filled with thoughts of God when they do external worship. They become aware of some power which is greater than their little limited selves. One should not criticize any activity which turns the minds of ordinary people towards an awareness of God. The same Bhagavan who admitted that idol worship is good for some people told me, "You need not do any external worship." Many years later, he told me that I should not even come to see him. He didn't give me a reason, but I suspect that he wanted me to give up my attachment to his external form. He told me, "Hold on to the self. If you can do that, you need no other practice. This is the ultimate and final sadhana." Bhagavan has written in one of his verses, Uladu Narpadu, "If you have a form, then God also has a form. If you have no form, then God also has no form. If you can see all forms as a manifestation of God, then how can you say that God has no forms? In Ribu Gita it says, all forms are Brahman. I have read somewhere, all forms are his forms, yet he has no form. Yes, the ocean has many waves on it, giving it an outer form, but water itself is formless. Manikava Chagar has sung, God is both darkness and light. He is both male and female. He is both false and real. He is everything. I recently received a letter from a friend. As I read it, I felt very happy. My mind was excited. Afterwards, I felt there is some attachment to this person. My love is not equal for everyone. Loving or liking one particular person is not good. Feel love towards everyone. That is desirelessness. I have a good friend who has been in prison for 10 years. He is very desperate. Is there anything I can do to help him? The whole universe is run by God. We should put all our burdens at his feet Leave the business of running the world to God. God has decided what actions our bodies will perform in this world. It is God's will that your friend's body is in prison. But God does not bind people's minds. They are always free to turn to Him. They can always turn to the self and dissociate themselves from the activities of the body. If you want to help your friend, send him some of Bhagavan's books. He will then have the possibility of knowing about his own self. If he understands them, he can try to attain inner freedom, even though his body is imprisoned. He is probably suffering because his body has been put in jail. If he comes to understand a little about his real nature by reading the teachings of Bhagavan, he can come to understand that only his body is in jail. Nobody can put the self in jail. If he learns to identify with his real self, he will be more free than his jailers. If we are ignorant of the self, the result is only misery and suffering. Your friend is probably feeling miserable because he thinks that he has been put in jail. Those who are outside the jail are mostly just as miserable because they limit themselves by identifying with the body. The outside people all imprison themselves in their bodies by wrongly identifying with them. People who are ignorant of the self lead a miserable life, whether they are inside or outside the jail. Aurobindo did a lot of sadhana in jail, and so did Gandhi. If you have the right attitude, jail can be a very congenial place in which to do your meditation. It takes a lot of effort to get stabilized in the self. I'm not sure if my friend is capable of making the effort. Yes, a great effort is needed. When wood is wet, it will not catch fire immediately. It must be first dried in the sun. When our minds have been dried by constant meditation, a single spark from the self will ignite them. Some people undergo much suffering because of their past sinful karma. This suffering purifies the mind to some extent in the same way that sunlight dries out wet wood. After the minds have been purified to some extent, they become more fit for jnana. God often creates a lot of difficulties for us merely to divert our attention from the world and turn it to Him. When we feel pain and frustration, we begin to ask, what can we do that will help us to get rid of this suffering? Often we turn to God for help. The sufferings in this world are often a gift from God. It is through the gate of misery and suffering that we can enter the kingdom of God. Suffering only appears to exist because we identify with the body and the mind. In reality, there is no misery and no suffering. Bhagavan used to say, there is nothing wrong with God's creation. Misery and suffering only exist in the mind. If we suffer because of the wrong ideas we have about ourselves, we can learn to transcend suffering by giving up these ideas or by turning to God. Suffering gives us the impetus to escape from our self-limiting ignorance. If God did not send these gifts of suffering and misery, many people would be content to live their whole lives alienated from God and ignorant of their true nature. Does the Guru's grace burn up karma? Can the Guru take away some of our past bad karma? I served Bhagavan for many years. By doing a lot of service to Bhagavan with all my heart and my full mind, the karmas of my previous lives were erased easily. It was all through His grace. When this period was over, Bhagavan told me, your karmas are finished. I did not expect Bhagavan to give me such a great blessing. Finding a great guru like Bhagavan depends on one's karma. One cannot hope to find such a guru unless one has done tapas in previous lives. The path of jnana is for those who only have a little karma left. Those who still have many karmas to undergo cannot follow the path of jnana successfully because they don't have the capacity to be still and quiet. Only those who have learned how to be still can abide in the self. If one is lucky enough to find a guru like Bhagavan, one should stay with him and serve him wholeheartedly. Many people came to Bhagavan, did seva, service, and said that they wanted self-realization. After some time, many of these people forgot the purpose for which they came to Bhagavan. They started dabbling in ashram politics and soon lost their desire for self-realization. Other people had a few good experiences and then left, thinking that they had nothing more to learn. If you have the opportunity to stay with the Guru, you should not waste your good fortune by leaving him or by indulging in worldly activities in his vicinity. I have read that if one meditates intensely enough, the current of meditation continues through the night. Just before I go to sleep at night, I repeat to myself, I'm not the body. I am not the mind. I am the immanent self. Will that have any effect? Will it work during the night? What you are doing is very good. If you go to sleep with that strong conviction uppermost in your mind, it will work on the mind while you are asleep. If this idea is present while you sleep, the next morning this thought will come up of its own accord as the first thought of the day. Swami frequently says that we should not identify with the body. If I reject the idea that this is my body, what other instrument can I use to realize the self? Don't I need to identify with the body in some way in order to use it to do sadhana? You are wearing a shirt. Does this mean that you must take this shirt to be yourself? You wear a shirt to keep warm, but you don't say, I am a shirt. You can use the body as an instrument to realize the self without thinking, I am the body. Just regard the body as a helpful tool. I'm puzzled by some aspects of this teaching. There is no doubt that Bhagavan was realized, but in that state he was still aware of his body. When Bhagavan was ill, he didn't say, I have pain. He said, it has pain. Since he had awareness of that pain in the body, he must still have been a little identified with it. Even when the body was experiencing pain, Bhagavan was beyond it. He was not affected by anything that was happening to the body. He was beyond in the sense that he was not concerned or troubled by it, but he was still aware that the body was experiencing pain. There was an awareness of pain, but there was no feeling. This is my body, I have pain. You can be aware of birds flying in and out of a tree without thinking, I am this tree, these birds are mine. Similarly, Bhagavan could be aware of bodily sensations without thinking, I am this body, this pain is mine. Bhagavan wore a body in the same way that other people wear a dhoti. You are attaching too much importance to bodies, both Bhagavan's and your own. It is possible to exist without being aware of the body in any way. Your experience in deep sleep should satisfy you that this is possible. Your questions and doubts are all coming from the body-mind level, from the idea that you are a body and a person. You can find out what the relationship between the body and the self is by experiencing the self as it really is. But to get that experience, you must first be willing to give up the idea that you are a body and a person. You will never have the experience while you are still clinging to erroneous ideas about the body. You will not resolve your doubts about the body by discussing them. You will only resolve them by giving them up. What is the relationship between the real I and the false I? What is the connection between them? How can there be any connection or relationship between that which alone exists and something which never at any time had any existence outside your mind? The self alone exists. It has no relationships with or connections to anything because there's nothing separate from it to have a relationship with. The false I has no reality. It is just an erroneous belief. When you finally stop believing that you are a person inhabiting a body, you become aware of what you really are. If someone who is cross-eyed looks at the top of Arunachal, he would see 2 peaks instead of 1. If such a person were not aware that he had defective vision, he might ask, what is the relationship between the 2 peaks? How can I build a bridge between them? There's only one proper answer to give to a person like this. Your vision is defective. If you get your eyesight corrected, you will see that there is only 1 peak. You will see that the second peak never existed outside your mind. Your spiritual vision is defective. It is making you see objects instead of the one self. You can cure this defect by establishing yourself in the self. The Nishta is not aware of multiplicity. He is only aware of the one self. I am observing how the teaching is going on inside. This morning when I awoke, my first thought was, I take shelter at the feet of Bhagavan. But then immediately a new thought arose. Who is taking shelter? I think that this new attitude is a consequence of listening to Swami's teachings. Your questioning is correct. I feel that there's some alertness inside. If you inquire into the origin of a thought as soon as it appears, your attention is diverted towards the self. The self is always alert. That is its nature. I am very accustomed to catch hold of something such as Bhagavan's form. It is part of my search for security. Now I can see that the desire for security is leaving me. You catch hold of the real Bhagavan strongly only when you give up all supports. By giving up your supports, you are not giving up your security. You are becoming more secure in the real Bhagavan. Even the image, the form of Bhagavan, is Maya. He resides within us as the self. That is the real Bhagavan. The saint Manikavachagar, after receiving the blessings of Shiva, sang a song in which he complimented Shiva by calling him a Mayavadin, one who propounds the doctrine of Maya. We must learn the truth about Maya from a guru and then utilize his grace to transcend it. Chinna Swami once tried to frighten me by telling me, "Don't believe what Bhagavan tells you. He is a Mayavadin. He will delude you and cheat you." I replied, "He may cheat this body and mind, but in doing so he will show me the self." In my early years here, I once went onto the hill to see the mango tree cave where Bhagavan used to live. Near it, a sadhu with long matted hair was sitting in Padmasana. I thought that he was a fake sadhu, so I ignored him and went on into the cave. When I came out and walked past him, he angrily exclaimed, "You have walked in front of me without doing namaskaram. I will curse you for this. You will be destroyed." I laughed at him and said, "I came to Arunachala because I wanted to be destroyed. May your curse come true because I want my ego to be destroyed." The sadhu was very unhappy when he saw that I was completely unafraid of him. The other day, Swami was saying that someone may be living here at the foot of Arunachala, but if that person's mind is not here, he will gain nothing by staying here. The Arunachala Puranam and Bhagavan both say that just the thought of Arunachala can take one to moksha. How should one understand these statements in the light of what Swami said? Those who think of Arunachala will gain mukti. The scripture says this. But even though one may stay at Arunachala, one may not feel any devotion towards this hill. One may not regard it as God. Many people are living here without giving more than a passing thought to the mountain. How can we conclude that such people are living in Arunachala? The truth is, one is where one's mind is. If one is living here, but the whole of one's mind is thinking of another place, one is really in that other place. There is a story which Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to tell. Once two friends went to listen to a lecture on the Bhagavatam. As they were going there, one of them thought, "What is there in this Bhagavatam? Let me go instead to a prostitute and enjoy a little happiness." He went to the house of the prostitute while his friend went to listen to the lecture. While he was lying with the prostitute, the first man began to feel a little guilty about what he had done. He thought to himself, how good it would be to use this human life to listen to stories of the Lord and to meditate on the Lord. He began to think wistfully about some of the stories from the Bhagavatam that he had heard before. Because of these feelings, his mind was with the Bhagavatam even though his body was with the prostitute. The other man who had gone to listen to the Bhagavatam was thinking about what his friend might be doing with the prostitute. He thought to himself, my friend must be having a lot more fun than I am. His body was present at the talk, But his mind was not on the Bhagavatam. It was with the prostitute. The one who was with the prostitute got the punya of listening to the Bhagavatam. The other man, even though he was physically present at the talk, incurred the sin of having been with the prostitute. So when Bhagavan said the thought of Arunachala gives mukti, he did not mean a single stray thought. He meant that one should keep the mind constantly on Arunachala. There is a verse in the Ashram Annamalai, O Arunachala, as I thought of you and so got caught in the web of your grace. You, like a spider, held me tight and consumed me. If you think of Arunachala just once, Arunachala responds by trying to draw you into itself. It does this by making you think about itself more and more. When the thoughts are strong and continuous, it makes you surrender completely. Like a spider, it then pulls you into its web and ultimately destroys you. So in the case of ripe devotees, it is possible to say that a single thought of Arunachala can lead step by step to liberation. The connection with Arunachala, is it in the mind or only in the heart? The first verse of Annamalai has two meanings. O Arunachala, you root out the ego of those who think of you in the heart. 2. O Arunachala, you root out the ego of those who think, Arunachala, I am. So one can have a connection in both the mind and the heart. The heart connection is of course superior, since that is the real Arunachala. Some people have no devotion towards Arunachala. They just live and work here. Does the power that is radiating from the mountain do them any good? You can take as much water from the ocean as you are capable of carrying. But if you don't bother to go down to the shore with the pot, you get nothing at all. Arunachala only gives its grace to those who have some kind of vessel to receive it in. If the mind thinks about Arunachala in a loving way, it automatically creates a space within itself, which can receive a little of the mountain's grace. Many people do pradakshina of this Arunachala hill. They have many desires. They want to achieve many things. In due course, they may get what they desire. But if you do giri pradakshina as a sadhana for obtaining knowledge of the self, then you will get that. Most people have many desires which they want to fulfill. But some rare people tell God, I want nothing. Make me desireless. That is my only desire. Such a one will be a fit instrument to receive grace. There is a verse in Kaivalya Navanitam. If you go near a tree, you will get its shade. If you go near a fire, you will be relieved of coldness. If you go to the river and drink, your thirst will be quenched. If you go near God, you will get His grace. If you do not go near and do not receive His grace, is it the fault of God? The one who gets the most grace is the one who is completely desireless. Such a person will have no desire, even for moksha. How effective is pradakshina of Arunachala? Is it as good as meditating on the self? Arunachala radiates the grace of the self. If you walk around it with reverence, keeping your mind quiet or thinking of the self, you are having satsang of the self. There is a great spiritual power emanating from Arunachala. You can feel it if you approach the mountain with humbleness, with reverence, and with a quiet mind. If one does pradakshina of Arunachala with the right attitude, both the mind and the body are purified. If you feel like doing pradakshina, then go, meditate while you walk. And if at other times you feel like sitting in meditation, do that. Both are the same, if they are done correctly and attentively. At all times, whatever the body may be doing, one should keep a steady awareness of the self. The main point of both pradakshina and meditation is to give up the identification with the body, to lose the I am the body idea. I feel that Arunachala is like a mother who will go with me everywhere, even when I am in another country. Arunachala does not go anywhere. Arunachala is the self, and the self neither comes nor goes. The word achila in Sanskrit means unmoving. There is a verse in Arunachala Mahatyam which says that all those who live within a 30-mile radius of Arunachala attain liberation without any effort or initiation. What does Swami think about this verse? For liberation, there must be continuous remembrance of Arunachala. One must have faith in Arunachala and surrender to it. Arunachala is pure consciousness. It is not an inert lump of rock. If you have faith that Arunachala is a guru who will guide you, it will respond with the appropriate guidance. But to get this guidance, one must surrender to the mountain and have strong faith in it. Arunachala is like a fire. If you come near it, you may get warm or even burnt. But if you are wearing insulation, even though you are physically near, you may not feel the fire. I feel a strong attachment to Arunachala. I also feel a need for solitude and quietness. I don't know how I could ever live away from here, out in the world again. Attachments and desires generally produce bondage, but a desire to stay here at Arunachala is a good desire, and may be encouraged. It is very good to be attached to Arunachala because Arunachala is the self. When you think about Arunachala, you are turning the mind towards the self. Most days I follow the practice, who am I? I try to feel the presence of I am within me. But sometimes I just like to feel I am somehow sitting in the presence of Bhagavan. Sometimes when I look at his picture, it gets filled with light. When I see Bhagavan like this, I always feel very peaceful and joyful. I don't ask anything of Bhagavan on these occasions. I just like to sit and bask in his presence. Sometimes I feel the need to love and be loved. At these times, I feel that there is something dry and unemotional about self-inquiry. Even so, I follow the path of self-inquiry most of the time. It is only occasionally that I have these bhakti phases. When they're over, I go back to doing self-inquiry with more vigor, and I seem to get better results. Because of this, I often stop doing self-inquiry and look at Bhagavan's picture. At these times, it gives me great pleasure to imagine that I am sitting in front of the real Bhagavan. What does Swami think of this attitude in this practice? One must keep one's attention on the self if he wants to make progress on the spiritual path. But since Bhagavan is also the self, you can also make progress by thinking of him. It is good to feel love and devotion toward Bhagavan. The more we love him, the more his grace flows to us in return. I wanted to know because sometimes I feel as if I am looking at the real physical form of Bhagavan. I feel very peaceful at these times. I'm not sure if I ought to indulge in these states. When I used to look at Bhagavan's picture, he seemed to me to be saying, I went beyond this body and established myself as consciousness. Now you try and do the same. Bhagavan is the self. If you concentrate on his image, he will call you towards him. He will try to pull you towards the real self. Sometimes I feel like a child. I feel I am holding Bhagavan's hand. I also feel that he is sheltering and protecting me. It is a strange, childlike feeling of being afraid of everything and everyone except Bhagavan. Having love for Bhagavan and having love for one's own self are the same. If we have devotion and love towards the form of Bhagavan and surrender to him, he will take us towards the reality. One cannot see the self-consciousness because it is not an object that can be perceived, but we can keep our attention on the self indirectly by having darshan of Bhagavan's form. I feel that the bhakti path is an effortless way. When I inquire, who am I feel that I must make a great effort to make the mind subside. The bhakti path seems to be more sweet, more joyful, and more effortless. It is always good to worship the Guru, but abiding in the Guru's teachings is far better. You can follow the bhakti path if you want to, but you should remember that it is almost impossible for the devotee to judge whether he is making progress or not. You should not jump to the conclusion that you are not making progress with your self-inquiry, simply because you find it hard to do, and you should not think that you will make more progress as a bhakta, simply because you find it easy to generate joyful states of mind. The same consciousness which is within you and within Bhagavan's form is within all other forms. We must learn to contact this consciousness by being aware of it at all times. I know that Bhagavan is within all forms, but sometimes I feel that it is easier to feel his grace by concentrating on an image of him. Self-inquiry is such hard work. One rarely feels blissful or peaceful doing it. Sometimes I feel like treating myself to a little bliss by looking at Bhagavan's picture for a while. There is nothing wrong with looking at Bhagavan's picture. It is very good practice. But you should not get sidetracked from your main objective, which is establishing yourself as consciousness. Don't get attached to states of bliss or give them priority over the quest for the self. If you become attached to peaceful or blissful states, you may lose interest in your main quest. It is good to feel blissful and peaceful, but don't indulge yourself in these states at the expense of self-inquiry. If you realize the inner self, if you realize that there is not an atom which is apart from the self, you will experience the real peace and bliss of the self. You will be the peace and bliss rather than being the experiencer of it. If you enjoy temporary states of peace and bliss in the mind, the experiencer of that peace and bliss will not want to subside into the self and disappear. Don't get attached to mental peace. Go beyond it, to the real peace, which comes from being the self. I think I indulge in these bhakti interludes because I have a great craving for love. Maybe I'm giving love only because I want more back in return. In the state of self, real love is always present. But when love is limited or directed to one person, it becomes desire. This kind of love creates suffering, not happiness. If you realize the self and love all equally, that is wisdom.